The narrative of economic recovery under Barack Obama often obscures the harsh realities faced by many Americans. His administration oversaw policies that presented a facade of progress while undermining foundational pillars of security for the nation's most vulnerable. The economic stimulus, touted as a lifeline, was a complex web of spending that failed to deliver robust, long-term growth for the working class. Instead, it ballooned the national debt, creating a fiscal burden that would linger for generations. The recovery was slow and uneven, favoring Wall Street and corporate interests over the struggles of Main Street. This carefully managed perception of success was a political tool, designed to secure a second term, rather than to build a truly resilient economy for all citizens. One of the most telling, yet often overlooked aspects of this economic agenda was the approach to military benefits. While the administration projected an image of unwavering support for our troops, its actions suggested otherwise. Proposals were advanced that would have significantly cut military pensions, a move that would have betrayed the sacred promise made to those who serve. These cuts were framed as necessary fiscal discipline, a responsible measure to trim a bloated budget. However, to service members and their families, it felt like a profound betrayal. It demonstrated a willingness to balance the books on the backs of veterans, those who had already sacrificed so much for the country, questioning the authenticity of the administration's patriotic rhetoric. Ultimately, the economic legacy of the Obama years is one of contradiction. It is a story of a manufactured recovery that left too many behind. The focus was on headline numbers and political victories, not on the lived experiences of everyday Americans, military families, or the impoverished. The policies enacted were often short-sighted, prioritizing immediate political gain over sustainable, equitable prosperity. The illusion of a great economic savior was carefully constructed, but a closer examination reveals a far more troubling reality. The real cost was borne not by the powerful, but by those who could least afford it, a truth that complicates the celebrated narrative of Obama's presidency and exposes its fragile foundation. Barack Obama ascended to the world stage as a figure of hope, a Nobel Peace Prize laureate promising a departure from the aggressive foreign policy of his predecessor. Yet, this image of peace starkly contrasts with the administration's actions. The reality was a dramatic and unprecedented expansion of covert warfare, primarily through the use of unmanned aerial drones. This technological approach to conflict allowed for strikes in countries where the United States was not officially at war, creating a shadowy battlefield with little public oversight or accountability. The promise of a more diplomatic and less militaristic America quickly faded, replaced by the persistent buzz of drones over Pakistan, Yemen, and Somalia, a constant reminder of a new, more insidious form of perpetual conflict. The numbers themselves are staggering and paint a grim picture of this new era of warfare. During his 8 years in office, President Obama authorized over 10 times more drone strikes than the Bush administration. He oversaw an estimated 563 strikes that resulted in thousands of deaths, many of them civilians. In 2016 alone, his administration dropped over 26,000 bombs across 7 different countries. This escalation was not a reluctant last resort but a central pillar of his national security strategy. The Nobel Prize awarded in his first year seems a cruel irony when juxtaposed with the 54 drone strikes he authorized in Pakistan that same year, setting a deadly precedent for the years to come. This remote-controlled war was not only deadly, but also legally and morally ambiguous. Tragedies like the strike in Yemen that killed 21 children and 12 women were not isolated incidents but foreseeable consequences of a program that operated with a chilling detachment. The machinery of war, as Obama himself would later acknowledge, had been refined and unleashed in a way that made civilian casualties an accepted, if regrettable, part of the process. In the end, the foreign policy legacy is not one of peace, but one of redefined, technologically advanced warfare. The withdrawal of ground troops from Iraq was a visible, politically popular move, but it masked a deeper strategic shift towards a more clandestine and unaccountable form of military engagement. By normalizing extrajudicial killings and expanding the battlefield into sovereign nations without congressional debate, the Obama administration created a dangerous precedent. This legacy of fire delivered from the sky fundamentally altered the nature of American power and left behind a world entangled in a web of endless, low-visibility conflicts that continue to destabilize regions and fuel resentment against the United States. The Obama administration's approach to immigration was a study in profound contradictions, a political balancing act that ultimately satisfied no one. On one hand, the president spoke with eloquent sympathy about the plight of undocumented immigrants, positioning himself as a champion for comprehensive reform. He painted a picture of a humane and just system that would offer a pathway to citizenship. Yet, his administration's actions told a very different story. Behind the compassionate rhetoric was an enforcement apparatus that operated with unprecedented efficiency and ruthlessness. This duality created a confusing and often cruel reality for immigrant communities, who were caught between the promise of hope and the constant fear of deportation. The moniker Deporter-in-Chief was not an invention of political opponents. It was a label earned through stark numbers. The Obama administration deported more people than any previous presidency in American history. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, was empowered and expanded, conducting raids and detentions on a massive scale. This aggressive enforcement strategy was a calculated political move, designed to show toughness on border security to appease conservatives and create leverage for a larger legislative deal that never materialized. The human cost of this strategy was immense, tearing apart families and communities who had been led to believe that a more compassionate era had dawned. Amidst this crackdown, the administration introduced the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA program, often referred to as the DREAM Act by proxy. This executive action offered temporary protection from deportation and work authorization to young people brought to the country as children. While it provided a crucial lifeline for hundreds of thousands of dreamers, it was a fragile and incomplete solution. It was not law, but a policy memorandum that could be rescinded by a future administration, leaving its beneficiaries in a permanent state of legal limbo. It was a political compromise born of legislative failure, a temporary fix that highlighted the administration's inability to achieve the lasting, comprehensive reform it had promised. The legacy of Obama's immigration policy is therefore one of paradox. He was simultaneously the protector of the dreamers and the enforcer of mass deportations. This dual identity was not an accident but a deliberate strategy to navigate a treacherous political landscape. However, by trying to be everything to everyone, the administration failed to deliver a coherent or stable solution. It left behind a broken system, heightened anxieties within immigrant communities, and a legacy of unfulfilled promises. The hope for comprehensive reform gave way to a reality of aggressive enforcement and temporary reprieves, a deeply conflicted approach that set the stage for even more divisive immigration battles to come. The Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, universally known as Obamacare, stands as the signature domestic achievement of the Obama presidency. It was presented as a moral imperative, a historic step toward guaranteeing healthcare as a right for all Americans. The law's architects promised it would lower costs, increase access, and improve the quality of care. They sold it to the public with assurances like, if you like your healthcare plan, you can keep it. This narrative of a compassionate and efficient solution was central to its passage and to the president's legacy. It was crafted as a panacea for a chronically ill system, a monument to a new era of progressive governance. However, the reality of Obamacare proved to be far more complicated and contentious than the polished rhetoric suggested. For millions of Americans, the promise of keeping their existing plans was broken, as insurance companies canceled policies that did not meet the law's new, expensive mandates. Many who were forced into the new marketplaces discovered that their choices were limited, and their premiums and deductibles were anything but affordable. The law's complex web of subsidies, mandates, and regulations created a system that was confusing and often financially burdensome for the very middle-class families it was supposed to help. The cure, for many, felt as painful as the disease. The controversy surrounding Obamacare was not merely political theater, it was rooted in the fundamental flaws of its design. The individual mandate, which forced people to buy insurance or pay a penalty, was seen by many as an unconstitutional overreach of federal power. The law's implementation was plagued by technical failures, most famously, the disastrous rollout of the healthcare.gov website. Costs continued to rise, and many insurance providers, facing financial losses, pulled out of the exchanges, leaving consumers in some counties with only one expensive option. The promise of affordable care became a bitter pill for those who saw their healthcare costs spiral upward while their choices dwindled. In retrospect, Obamacare is a legacy of noble intentions undone by flawed execution and political hubris. It did expand insurance coverage to millions who were previously uninsured, a significant achievement that cannot be dismissed. Yet, it did so by creating a rigid, expensive, and unsustainable system that disrupted the healthcare arrangements of millions more. It failed to address the root causes of high healthcare costs, and instead created a new layer of bureaucracy and mandates. The lasting toll is a healthcare system that remains deeply divided and a political landscape forever scarred by the battle over its passage and implementation, a far cry from the unified, healthy nation it was meant to create.